February 15, 1999 was at the heart of the wrestling wars at their peak. Both shows were drawing a combined audience of over 12 million viewers. WCW featured one of the famous angles in history, building the unopposed hour on Ric Flair on his way to the arena, while his driver Eric Bischoff lures him to an nWo trap in the middle of a field. The skit showed Flair getting a brutal beatdown by all members of the nWo for several minutes. A violent scene that cost WCW thousands of dollars to produce between the camera work, limos, Hummers, and helicopters. While cost was big, the majority of the segment drew a show-high 5.0 rating. With the more important point of it being the go-home storyline for the Super Brawl pay-per-view, a show that was headlined by Hogan vs. Flair and drew over 450,000 buys, one of the biggest numbers in company history. WWF started with one of the biggest first quarters in the history of the show, coming off the Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view, featuring one of the most stacked segments in history with Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin, Mick Foley, Vince McMahon, The Rock, and making his Raw debut the Giant Paul White. The over 18 minutes segment then grew further to a 6.4 rating, setting up the ladder match for the belt for the main event, as the final payoff of Rock and Mankind's 5-month program. WCW got a boost from Bret Hart wrestling Mad TV host Will Sasso, while the closest segment of the night came in the top of the hour. The nWo arrived at the arena, mocking Flair until Roddy Piper came out to challenge Hogan. The nWo segment along with the unadvertised Hogan vs. Piper match went neck and neck with a tag match on Raw, featuring Shane with Kane against X-Pac with Triple H. It was clear that while Raw was the hotter show by this time, fans switched channels in huge numbers to see the nWo along with the always drawing Piper vs. Hogan match. One of the most entertaining aspects of the shows during the peak time was the hardcore matches all over the arena, going to wild location every week and giving the program a different dimension. After the nWo with Piper was over, viewership went back to normal as Raw featured one of its rating draws in Sable. Sable at the time was at the peak of her popularity, getting offers outside the wrestling industry. The segment along with the hardcore match bumped Raw a full ratings point. In the main event battle, Rock and Mankind put on one of the show's greatest ever matches, the final match in their all-time great rivalry. The nWo were back for the main event, calling out Flair who was on the way to the arena, ending with a big brawl between the groups. With the big star power on both programs, both shows got big rating boosts, with Rock and Mankind peaking the night with an 6.8 rating for the conclusion of their ladder match. Raw won overall with a 5.9 to 3.9, one of the biggest margins in history at that point, with Raw's 5.9 rating setting an all-time WWF record for a competitive show.